Welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 105. Now, I think for both of us, it's been a week slightly different to the norm. Less hard grafting and long hours, particularly for you, as far as I'm aware, by your normal standards, because you've been on a little break, if I'm not mistaken. How's that been?
I actually learned when I got back, I knew there wasn't something right with me. For a few weeks, I'd had this feeling and this complete understanding that there was something not quite right. I was healthy, so I was grateful for that. But there was not, I don't know, it's hard to articulate. And then I get back from the break and I watched this 10-second clip on Instagram of just a sponsored ad, weirdly enough. And I realised I was completely burnt out, completely burnt out. And I almost felt, not almost, I did feel guilty of even feeling like that and having that feeling, because I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And I've got so many things that I need to still do, short-term and long-term, and so many things that I could be working away at. I did feel very guilty because I didn't feel like I was working with maximum efficiency or even diving into as many projects properly as I should. So I came home and realised that is exactly what it was. And some symptoms that I had were, no matter how long I slept for, I just felt drastically tired and low energy. I couldn't maintain focus for any amount of time. And that isn't just your typical doing something uninterested and your mind wanders. No, just any task I could not maintain focus. Looking at my phone way more in the last 2 weeks than I'd looked at my phone in the last 2 years. I'm not even kidding. The amount of pickups that I had just looking at notifications, I never did that ever. And I was always very good at doing that. So that was another thing. And just constantly just feeling meh, completely meh. And I was eating well, I was sleeping, I was hydrating, I pretty much was ticking all of those boxes, getting daylight, all of the things that I always say to people, are you ticking those boxes before you start saying, oh, I feel like this and I feel like that? Well, are you doing the basics right? And I was doing the basics right, but I realised after I come back from that 3 days, yeah, I was completely burnt out. And in all honesty, I could have I could have done with a couple extra days, because I just began to sort of feel normal again, but I could have dealt with a couple of more days just brainstorming some ideas for the future in a more relaxing and sort of creative way. But I drafted all my work before I went. It was my birthday on the Friday, so I stayed up till 3 a.m. on that Thursday night, drafted all the work for the weekend, got all my emails, all my ducks in order, or ducks in a row, whatever the saying is, got all my work out, reached out to all of my clients, made sure all the boxes were ticked, and then just went away. And I did not pick up my phone once. I was with my family.
Love that.
And I just did not pick up my phone, not once. And I cannot tell you how much I love that. People like their phone, and people talk about, oh, I can't get off my phone, I'm doom scrolling. I don't. I actually don't. I
wish I could get into that position.
What, that you getting off your phone?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, broadly speaking, but I think doom scrolling is just a habit that's so tough to crack. I've done it in the past, but I never feel productive out of it. I never get anything out of doom scrolling. It's a way to just suspend your brain for quick dopamine hits. That's just, it's such a nothing thing to do. There is nothing, like, you can do something that's not necessarily productive and still actually get something out of it. You know, doom scrolling is the complete opposite. Like, you do not get anything out of scrolling through Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, because they're all the same. They're designed to hook you and just keep you there. And then before you know it, 45 minutes, an hour's passed, and you've just wasted time. So I wish I could get into that position you're in, because I actually have all my notifications off, except from texts and important things, which helps me massively. Like, it just means I'm checking less, and that's just a good habit to build. So I'm at that point. I think the next stage is to probably get to where you're at. So I can admire that.
I would say some tips from my perspective. If you are going to look at your phone, it's not inherently a bad thing. I always say this, but it is true. It's not inherently a bad thing to go on these social media apps, but just curate your algorithm so that there's value there. So if you're scrolling on things where it's just absolute low IQ nonsense, just hold it down, click not interested, and unfollow the account if you follow the account. And then every time you see something which is, maybe it's even goes under the category of just vibes content, of someone traveling or someone making food or something even a little bit more wholesome that isn't necessarily just junk, that's still okay. But if you can get into a position where you're at least picking up different things with work, maybe it's a marketer, maybe it's a strategist, maybe it's a thumbnail creator, maybe it's a podcaster. It doesn't always necessarily have to be exactly what you do. You can still take value from it. And the second part is bully yourself out of it. This is really not that conventional wisdom. No, but you just have to bully yourself mentally. This is what I've realised I've done.
That's what I used to do, actually. Yeah. Because before, a few years ago, sorry to just interject, but I used to be on TikTok so much. This was a few years ago. And then the moment I realised it, I was like, I couldn't tell you. If I've been watching TikToks for a few hours in a day, like 2 hours, let's say, which is egregious, and I think about that. I was like, I couldn't remember a single one. I couldn't remember a single TikTok, a single video in that entire time. And I was thinking about that, and that made me realize, like, what value am I even getting? Is as soon as I scroll to the next video, I've forgotten the last one. And that's how it goes for that entire period of time that I'm watching those. I'm not getting anything out of it besides wasting my day. So as soon as I realized that, I was able to get off it. And I don't use TikTok at all. But and then YouTube Reels came out, or YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, they all came with their own versions. And I've actively tried to go back and like just roll back my YouTube to a version which doesn't have the feature. You can't do it, which is really frustrating. There's extensions you can use on the website to do it on desktop, which works. But, there's getting your brain out of that hardwired mode is a challenge. And I'm not as bad as other people, but it's still something I want to like completely eject out of my system.
I think with all habits, right? And I've made quite a lot of changes to my habits in the last few months, the last 6 months, probably since the start of the year. The main thing with building a habit or tearing a habit down is just micro changes, and it's never that attractive and it's never that sexy, atomic habits, but it's just the key. If you scroll TikTok 3 hours a day, which is egregious, by the way, then try and get it to a point where it's 2.5 hours, then get it to a point where it's an hour, then get it to a point where you give yourself 10 scrolls. This is what I used to do. I used to say, right, okay, you get 10 scrolls and then you have to get off the platform. And I would just go 10. And firstly, you absorb them a little bit more, especially if you've got a good algorithm now that you've curated, because you say, right, okay, I've got 10 to enjoy or to watch or to gain something from, and then I'm going off of it. And then you just have to build it down. And then next thing you know, boom. And especially when you work on your phone, like I do, I probably do more than you, but we do. Yeah. You associate it to work. So that's why I said earlier, before we move on, that's why I said I love not going on my phone, because you know what? This actually segues in quite nicely to the pay-per-view this weekend, because this is something that Sean O'Malley did to the build-up, and I guess that we can sort of speak about this a little bit, because he made some really drastic changes to his lifestyle, and yes, I think there's elements of the first fight being a catalyst to that, but actually listening to him, and also from my own experience, I actually don't think that's anything to do with the first Merab fight. Is the reason why he got rid of social media, is the reason why he's stopped watching PORN. I'm not sure what you're allowed to say on YouTube or whatnot. All of these different things, I think right? It's a weird one. These cheap dopamine hits. Because if you actually go back as long as Sean O'Malley's been competing and you listen to his podcasts and his interviews and him with Tim Welch, one thing that he actually doesn't get enough credit for is his mentality, his mindset. And I know he's quite a silly, sort of goofy, as the Americans would say, character, but he is very much into his sort of philosophy, and he's very much into finding peace. And I know that he's read Naval, the Almanac of Naval Ravikant infinite times, just like myself, which has a ton of old Buddhist wisdom, which I always quote. And he said a lot of things in this build-up, which is exactly from that book, which is a case of if you have minimal desires, and Sean O'Malley's desires are essentially freedom and financial freedom and the health of his family, then you are at peace. And he was realizing, I actually have peace in my life because I have my family, I have my children, I have my house, I have my friends, my family, and I get to train. So why do I need these external pieces of dopamine or validation or whatever it may be, or even just distraction, when in truth you can sort of shut that off and you realize, okay, if my minimal desires are met, then I can be peaceful. And you realize that and that was the same for me, right? When I was on my trip and I was happy to not go on my phone, it's because my desires are essentially, there's maybe three, but my two desires are the health of myself and my family, and then the ability to do the job I love. And I was doing both of them in that real time. I was with my family and I am doing the job I love. So it was really easy for me to switch off my phone and actually just be peaceful and truly, truly present. Even just being on the beach and going fossiling. Mine just completely emptied and just very, very present in the moment. So yeah, a good way to sort of segue in, but also to sort of highlight some things that he's improved on.
Yeah, and I think that's for Sean O'Malley and of course for yourself, I think that's everyone can take value of that universally, regardless of your occupation. Yeah, of course. Also, I do want to apologise for you and to the listeners because someone has decided to start mowing their lawn. I don't know if that's picking up on the mic. I do apologise. Hopefully it's not too invasive. But I think, as you said, a good place to segue into the pay-per-view of UFC316. And of course, we can run our predictions in. Usually, we tend to agree on most counts, but maybe not this one. I don't know. I feel like I've got some different opinions to you. And I think we may as well start at the top with the man you just mentioned, Sugar Sean O'Malley, who has made changes to his camp, his lifestyle. Big changes. And whether that will be effective come fight night and the cage door is shut, I don't know. I'm going to say no because I think Merab Dvalishvili is a force of nature. He is the machine for a very good reason. And I think it'll be a closer fight than last time. Naturally, I think Tim Welch, Sugar Sean O'Malley's coach, being one of the smartest minds in the game, great insight into the sport, he will have made changes to Sean's approach and they will come out differently and they will be ready for those takedown attempts. But I think with the way Merab fights and that just absolutely relentless pace, it's one of those things where he will grind you down. It doesn't matter what game plan you come at him with. Cardio trumps all. As there's a reason that is the saying, cardio is king. It's because it is. Merab is the king of cardio. And I think it will be the same result as last time. I think it will just be a grinding decision win with Merab just swarming him and taking him over. I really just don't see it going another way. And I like Sean O'Malley. And in a way, I would almost like him to win the belt because it would make for something interesting for the division. I think change is always overall positive in this game. We like variety. And yeah, but I just... Merab is Merab, you know? He's that guy.
Have you watched the first fight again?
Back? Yeah, I have.
Not as much of a landslide as people make it out to be.
I think that you can say that about a lot of Merab's fights purely on the fact that he doesn't rely on damage as much per se, which might be to his detriment. I think it's just the relentless pace, the front-footed approach, the takedowns. Even if he doesn't keep them there, he'll take you down and again and again. And in a lot of ways, that's actually more effective in the eyes of the judges. Being taken down multiple times, I would say, to an extent. And yes, there was that moment in the 5th round where Sean landed that nice front kick to the body. That was a real moment for him. But I think the only thing that I'd say, the big vulnerability, this is what I said about the first fight, and I actually got this wrong. The big vulnerability from Merab is those pocket exchanges off the exit. It's those short shots. Cejudo caught him with one. Marlon Moraes did as well. It's that short, like left hook or right hook coming off a clinch, which Merab is very vulnerable to. Sean O'Malley's style has never lent to that sort of move being a valid option for him because he fights from range, down the middle. And Merab is a guy who's mobile, keeps his head off the center line, is darting in and out, and very difficult to hit. And that's why Sean couldn't really find that chin in the first fight at all. And to be honest with you, I think it'll be very much the same in that regard as well. But I don't know. You're sounding like you've got a different take here, just from your general cadence.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb on this one. Now, don't get it twisted. If we wake up on Sunday morning and it's unanimous decision to Merab Dvalishvili, I am not going to be shocked. I really am not. A couple of factors that we need to bring into the equation. Firstly, Sean O'Malley is coming off a nice break. A break where it's long enough to fully recover, fully heal mentally, physically, and come into a camp fresh. Whilst Merab is not. He's coming off a 5-round, very difficult fight with Umar. I know he won it, but again, tricky fight. He's coming off injuries, the same as everyone. We have to obviously paint that picture, which is typical for any fighter. But also another 25 minutes and 35 years of age. Now, I know he is the machine. I know he is an enigma, but these are all relevant points. And they may not be 80% of the pie, but they may be 1 or 2% of the pie, which is just adding up to my eventual picture, which I'm about to paint. I actually am going to go out on a limb and say this looks completely different, this fight. I really do. I don't think... I think we may see close rounds, but I honestly just have Sean O'Malley just winning this quite convincingly, to be perfectly honest. I do think he'll get taken down, probably. I do think he'll likely get taken down, but I don't think his takedown defense is a problem, to be perfectly honest. A lot of people are saying, oh, he should work on his takedown defense. I don't really think, if you go back and watch that first fight, that was much of the problem. I think more of the problem
it's the pace, I think.
It was more a case of him not trusting his cardio and his training camp and not being able to grapple enough, bearing in mind that he had never done 25 minutes at that point. Let's not forget that. He didn't really know what he had in the tank. He didn't really know what he was capable of. And he was scared because he's going in there with the cardio king and thinking, right, okay, I'm going to settle a little bit in these positions because then I'll get back to my feet. And I think he knows now he can push a pace. I think he knows now he's going to have a camp behind him where he has grappled hard. And he may get taken down, but I think he'll get back to his feet, or at least he'll mitigate a danger enough to then get back standing. And when it is standing, I think we're going to see more output, more activity. I think we're going to look.
Yes.
I think we're going to look for. He's going to look for those kicks to the leg a little bit more to slow him down and to slow down the movement of Merab and the body. I know that's an obvious narrative, but I really do think that's the case. Sean has some of the best heaps in the game, and I think he's going to go to them. I don't know. It's interesting because in my mind, I thought, right, we're not going to see Sean going southpaw as much because that overhand right single leg is more available from Merab, which is his favourite technique. But then again, I've seen a lot of his training footage where he is in actual southpaw. So that'll be interesting to see that. But I definitely think he's going to need more output and just be smartly aggressive. Smartly aggressive. Because if he can start getting Merab going backwards, Merab is going to be infinitely less of it is. But if anyone's going to be able to get you second guessing, covering the void, as Demetrius Johnson would call it, and who's it going to be? You could argue Corey Sandhagen. Okay, fair enough. He potentially even has more skills than Sean O'Malley. But if we're talking who is going to be the scariest person to have in front of you to cross a big distance, it's Sean O'Malley. Unequivocally Sean O'Malley in the bantamweight division because of his speed, because of his agility, because of his unpredictability, because of his shots up the middle. I do think his knees are always going to come into play, the way that he feints.
Well, not enough of those in the first fight. I would say that as well.
What I would say to the knees is they're not actually that easy to land, to be perfectly honest. They're really not. And the amount of times you get someone land a flush patella to the chin is very rare. And the chances of you actually getting a thigh and then someone getting your leg is quite high. So I think uppercuts and I think straights to the body, jabs to the body, right hands to the body, straight left, I think he'll go to the body, straight left, teep left. I think very similar to the super leg combinations, when you go teep, fake the teep jab. I think we're going to see a lot of those sort of things from Sean. I think he's going to be a little bit more aggressive, and I think he's actually going to take 3, if not 4 rounds.
Damn, I like that. Yeah, you're right, actually, about the knees. The only ones I can really think of in recent memory of an outright real finish from a knee from like a takedown shot is the ones that come to mind. Moraes versus Aljamain Sterling, which is such an underrated knockout that people don't talk about. And also Lerone Murphy versus Makwana Mirkani. That's a real sleeper one. I think people don't see.
Good knowledge.
Know about that one too. And that's it. But you're right though. That's an argument that people bring up a lot. It's like, oh, why doesn't he just throw more knees? And I almost was kind of guilty of saying it. But even if it's just showing it, I think showing the knee is more the point I was trying to make rather than actually going for one. Because I remember I had this debate back when the whole Tom Aspinall was flirting with an Alex Pereira fight, and that was, in the general zeitgeist. And people were saying, oh, Alex Pereira will just land a big knee on Aspinall when he shoots a takedown, and that'll be it. And it's just like, that's not an easy thing to do, especially against someone who is very much going to be quicker than you in the cage. Mate. So, I mean, yeah, it's no easy task. But it's for Sean, as I was saying, and as you said as well, it's about showing. It's about just showing different moves, that feinting those uppercuts. I think back to the Eddie Wineland fight, that was how we set up that finish, was through that little feint of an uppercut. Just showing a lot of ideas and faces to keep Merab guessing, and that's how we can get him moving onto the back foot. So that's the path to victory. I definitely agree in that regard. It's a tough one, man. It's tough to beat Merab.
I also just think, again, easier said than done, of course, with all of this, but in the championship fights, it is these small margins. I really do think that Merab's not going to be deterred by anything, right? He's going to try and impose his will under any circumstances. Mm-hmm. But with that said, I believe Sean has to get some respect early, because in the back of Merab's mind, and even in interviews, he said, he hurt me, he hits hard. He's acknowledged these things, and that's what I like about Merab. He's always very transparent, sometimes too transparent. Yeah. But yet he has in the back of their mind, last time they fought, he's clutching his stomach and bending over and knowing that pain. I think Sean has to remind him early the danger that is involved when he crosses that distance. If you come near me, you're going to be met with a teep straight to your liver, you're going to be met with a stiff jab, or I'm going to be showing you uppercuts and knees. He has to get something land early, not necessarily try and put fights ending intentions on it, but something which is just going to get the respect to at least get that 0.1 second of guesswork from Merab. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more... Again, we never fully know with injuries, right? We never fully know. And to be honest, injuries apparently don't even affect Merab. He had no arm and no back going in there against Umar Nurmagomedov and still flipping. He's a beast. Like, he's an absolute... and with all of this said and done, like, he's a phenom. I need to stress this. Like, he has the greatest conditioning in MMA history. Yeah, ever. And...
Ever. It's not even, like, debatable. It really isn't.
No, it's not even closely debatable. And then if you actually want to discuss it, maybe just from a numerical perspective, technically has some of the best wrestling of all time as well. If you want to, you could argue that he gets more takedowns because he doesn't keep people down. There's an argument to be said there, which I understand.
Yes.
But there's actually something flipping more exhausting about getting taken down, back to your feet, taken down, back to your feet. And it's last thing we'll say before we sort of move on to the next fight. Well. Mentally, but also I was watching this interesting video about how they ran some research. Now, I don't know to what extent, so I'm just going to be one of those people that just says they did some research and there's nothing really more behind it, but it sounds logical, so I'm running with it. But they basically was talking about how teeps can be more effective, not in damage necessarily, but psychologically, than a big right hand. And the reason is because with teeps, what you get is constant pattern interruption.
Yes.
Someone lands a clean shot, boom. Okay, oof, he's landed a clean shot. You can get a bit of motion, you get a bit shaken up. But if you've got someone, or if you've ever sparred and someone has a nice teep and boom, every time you just take a step forward, it just jolts you back. Boom. It just jolts you back. And it constantly disrupts this rhythm. Psychologically, it's very damaging. And that is what Merab brings to the table. He constantly disrupts the rhythm, not with a teep, but with that takedown. So it really is just a battle of the forces. They're completely opposing fighters, and that's why it's so interesting. But I'm going to go Sugar Sean. I would not be shocked. I really would not be shocked if it's not the late third, fourth, early fourth round. And boom, he goes long, right stabbing teep to the stomach like he did before. He gets Merab her, and then boom, he rips to the body. And then he fades back, and then boom, he lands an overhand left. And now he's just got Merab with his hands up against the cage, and he just sees everything coming. He goes full Matrix, and he just finishes with a flurry, and he's just got his hands out like this. He's got his eyes closed, and the arena just goes crazy, and he just doesn't even make a noise. And I really just think the Sugar Show is coming back in full effect. Maybe I want it to more than it actually may do, but I can really see that happening.
I think I'm the same.
I can really see it happening.
As well, but I think in an era right now, yeah, for sure. And I think in an era right now, again, we've spoken at length before about Sean O'Malley's actual tangible star power when it in terms of translating to pay-per-view sales, perhaps not being as much as people might expect it to be. But equally, in terms of social power, which he is far and away clearer than most fighters in the UFC, that's always nice to have. And in a time where the UFC is particularly at a lower point, yeah, I'm pretty sure they hit their lowest ever viewing figure on the Erin Blanchfield Macy Barber fight night, if I'm not mistaken.
Good.
And I know that's good, right? In terms of it will promote change, a catalyst for change. And I know that's somewhat of an outlier because that card was shit and we're talking about a pay-per-view here, but it is a general representation of where the UFC is now. If Sean O'Malley is to win a UFC 316 come Saturday night, I think that's generally a net positive, I think, for the sport. And in terms of just put it on a slight upwards tick, let's say. So that's an exciting one. Co-main event-wise, I think you can almost say the same thing if we hear our new in there as well, because Kayla Harrison is a real push for the women's game. And you're shaking your head, but I think this fight only goes one way, to be honest with you. And I'm a fan of Juliana Pena. I know you are as well, but mate, I think this is going to be legalized murder here for Kayla Harrison. I could be wrong, but that wrestling, that judo, mate. I know. I mean, every time I watch, put it this way, and I got no disrespect to Juliana Pena. Oh, but every time I see that Nunes rematch and I see that striking flurry that Pena comes in with, where she's just throwing shots, you know, from her baseball line, her wrist, and it's just like, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. You can't do that against someone who can hit hard. And Kayla Harrison might be a bit raw with her striking, but she can hit pretty hard.
She can't.
But as well, I think the wrestling will be too much. That's just what I think. I don't know. Again, happy to be proven wrong. I like upsets. So I'm curious what you have to say, though, because we might be disagreeing 2 for 2 here. No,
we're disagreeing hard on this one. The more I think about it, the more confident I am.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know how Kayla Harrison wins.
Real quick. Wow.
I don't know how Kayla Harrison wins. I don't know how she wins. I'm not saying she can't win. I'm just saying I look at paths to victory and I think, how does she win this fight? How does she do it? Does she take Juliana Pena down, keep her there and beat her up for 3 rounds? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Now, every fighter has to go through a weight cut. That is for sure.
Good point.
Every fighter does not go through a weight cut process like Kayla Harrison. This isn't just a skill for skill and I'm weighing up how this fight looks and I think, okay, this girl wins. There's part to that and I'll get into that in a second. I can't emphasize enough how damaging, both short-term and long-term, this insane weight cut is for Kayla Harrison. Insane. If it was a perfect world, she would probably be competing near 170 pounds. Less perfect world, realistically 165, 160 at lowest. This is 135 pounds championship weight.
It's a very good point.
I cannot emphasize this enough. When she was in the Olympics, she was competing at what, 178 pounds? 178.
Mental.
And that was decades ago. Bearing in mind that she's coming towards the back end of her career and she's absolutely bolo. Her lean body mass must be flipping 140 pounds minimum. Her lean body mass must be 140 pounds minimum. So not only is she absolutely mentally torturing herself through this camp, she said something crazy. Now, don't quote this because I may not be bang on the money, but she was saying something like she would have to do 6 hours of or 3 hours of steady state walking every day, additionally to her training camps. to help her make the weight. And she's never made 135. And she's most certainly never made 135 going 25 minutes. And there are not many fighters, this is why I'm so confident on this, there are not many fighters in the world where you can guarantee two things. Very, very rare. And Julia Pena, while she is not the most aesthetically pleasing fighter, she ticks two boxes every single time. And that's actually why I actually am a big fan of Juliana Pena. No, it's not just because she was super nice to me in Manchester and she has the most glorious skin I've ever seen in my life. It was glowing, magnificent golden skin. And I can never stress that enough. It is not just that. She does a fantastic job promotionally and chatting absolute breeze for 4 months working up to the event, which not a lot of fighters do. And number two, she brings it 100%,
pressure.
100% of the time. I know that's going to happen. I know Julia Pena, once that door closes, is going to start and not stop for 25 minutes. She's not going to go at the pace of Merab, but she's going to go with the same intention and not a million miles off that sort of pacing. I'm not saying it's apples for apples, but I'm saying it's not a million miles off with the intention. So I know that to be true.
You are selling it to me, I have to say.
I've seen her do that infinite amount of times. So just from a probabilities perspective, a mathematical perspective, sure, Kayla Harrison can do this. I'm not saying she's incapable because she's an outlier in regards to athletic performance. Of course, she's a two-time Olympic gold champion. She's a champion in PFL. She's an outlier. She's capable of these great feats. However, I've never seen her do these things. I've never seen her make 135. I've never seen her go 25 minutes with the championship caliber fighter.
She has made 135, no?
Well, how could she?
Oh,
She's
right,
never...
no, championship weight. Championship weight.
Championship weight, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
within
a pound difference, right?
Or half a
so it's a
pound
difference.
Yeah, right.
I've never seen her make 135 in the UFC. I've never seen that. And I've never seen her against a championship level fighter. I've never seen that either, or at least a more recently championship level fighter in Juliana Pena. I've never seen either of these things. I've seen that from Juliana Pena. I've seen that. And you can play the replay of her like flailing arms and getting buzzed down by Amanda Nunes. Kayla Harrison's not got that level of striking. She's not got that level of power. And weirdly enough, at such a low weight class, because her body's so taxed and it's so drained, that even when she rehydrates, she doesn't look like a quick 135. She looks slower. I guarantee you she would be faster at 155 pounds than she would at 135 pounds because her body is that depleted. I couldn't be more confident on the Juliana Pena pick.
Really well. I have to
couldn't
say,
be more confident.
Yeah, you might have genuinely just shifted, mate. Get into sales, brother. Honestly, I might have to change my prediction. I think I almost completely forgot about the weight cut, as stupid as that sounds, but
it's all I can think about.
She's such an outlier. You're right, exactly. Anytime Kayla Harrison fights, that's kind of always the topic of conversation. It always has been since she joined the UFC because getting to 135 is such a big ask. And as you said earlier, right, championship weight, so the margins are much more thinner. And with the amount of work she has to do to get there, every 0.1 of a pound is massive. It's a massive, massive ask. So that's a very good point you're making. And that again, you're right, that will make such a difference come fight night. And Pena is such a pressure fighter. As you said, she's relentless. She will make it dirty. Yeah. She might not have the technique, but she will make it difficult. That's what won her the first fight against Nunes, because she didn't have a good camp, Amanda Nunes, at that time in the first fight they had, and she wilted under that pressure as a result. And that's what gave Pena the route to victory. So I think you might be right. We could see a similar route with that against Kayla Harrison. I might have to agree with you. I can't believe I'm doing this.
I'm just bringing up cliches, but it's true, and they're cliches for a reason. Because I've seen this firsthand now. I've been in this game long enough where I've seen people, I know people who have been through these things, and I see how it affects their camp. So I've actually got visceral understanding of what this looks like. So when I tell you that when you are making weight, which is not where you should be, all of this energy, mentally and physically, is all to making weight in a fight camp, all of it. Now, for the most part, you're not skill building when you get into a camp. You're not. You're not really adding skills. You may be refining certain strategies and you're basically trying to get as sharp as possible, but you're not really adding tools to the arsenal. That's what you do out of camp. If you're in camp making that sort of weight, there is very, 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 very little you're going to be leveling up. You just are. And she's never had the greatest striking ever. She traditionally uses a big boom overhand left, which is nice, into her single legs and her double legs, which she usually gets. And then that is but like what you said, Juliana Pena is a pressure fighter. So what happens now if Kayla Harrison's got to punch on the back foot? I think she's going to be well out of her depth. She's not going to have the takedown, which is as available because she's going to be going backwards. And she certainly doesn't have the striking caliber to be moving backwards and laterally and start pinging. Even if it is Juliana Pena and she does serve her head on a bit of a platter.
Fuck it.
She's going to absolutely... Kayla Harrison's going to absolutely smoke her in 2 rounds now. I'm going to go, and forget all of that. Forget all of that.
Yeah, fuck it. I'm putting 300 quid on. No, the odds are crazy. The only reason why I say it is like you should. If you're that confident, mate, put your money where your mouth is.
I couldn't be more confident.
I know you're not big on betting, but
I couldn't be more confident.
I've kind of whittled on it recently, but I mean, I'll give you the odds right now if you want to hear.
I think she might finish her.
I mean, I'll tell you this. Sorry, apologies. Juliana Pena is a plus 455 on Tapology right now. And Kayla Harrison is a minus 625 to win. Money, that's the money line.
Oh, that's...
I don't know if that's... What's the one on the UFC? Oh, let me
She's
get the UFC
champion.
One.
She's the current champ.
Yeah. Yeah, on UFC, Pena's a plus 525.
That's blasphemous.
And Kayla Harrison's a minus 7. Kayla Harrison's a minus 750.
That's well off. Well off.
I like that. You're right. I might have a little punt on that.
That's
not
well
opposed.
off.
Not opposed in the slightest.
My question is, before we wrap up, right?
I take it back. Everything I said earlier.
I do re-emphasize this, and again, to just sit on the fence a little bit, but I have to actually be honest with my assessment. She's an outlier. I'll say that again. She's an outlier. So nothing really is outside the scope of her ability, I think, with Kayla Harrison, because she's done so many incredible things. It would be naive for me to suggest she couldn't go out there and do another. Naive.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just saying the cards are very much stacked against her in this particular... Because if it was another fighter, I would... Maybe not... It's just the style of Juliana, which I know is going to be like that every single time, right? I just know she's going to look like that every single time. So my money is guaranteed to say that she's going to be aggressive, walk forwards, take some damage, but afflict damage. And what happens even if Kayla Harrison has a good round 1 and a good round 2, but Juliana's landed a couple of shots, couple of hooks, couple of hits to the body, and it's round 3, and the takedown's not really as available anymore now, and 3, 4, and 5 she has to strike, and she has to strike going backwards, and she has to strike with some damage, and she's never been into those rounds, and she's had a horrible camp just depleting her body.
Massively out of her depth.
And her body's saying, oh, my organs have no water around them, no fat whatsoever, and one body shot feels like 10, and Juliana's just going boom to the chin. Boom. Maybe she gets a takedown. What happens if Kayla Harrison goes on her back? I think Juliana Pena might finish her. I think she might finish her.
Yeah, you're not even wrong.
Really
wait. What are the odds on Pena by a finish? Pena by a sub odds. We're going to get this up.
I'm either going to be so right or so wrong, and I'm ready to be one of them.
Go with it. I actually respect that, like you're going for that, because it's always like a lot of people say that just for out of print, like for the sake of it, but like you actually have something to back it up. There's tangible reasons to pick Pena here, and do you know Pena? Can I look at odds? I'm not. This is versus Kayla Harrison. It's closing. The line is moving. I'm trying to look at proper in-depth stuff. I don't know if I can just yet, but
well, let's move on to the next fights anyway.
Yeah, of course. And
we'll have a bit more of a brief one.
Speaking of other underdogs, another one I actually like in terms of the underdog shout, Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pfeiffer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there's nice. There's again maybe a bit more risk, I'd even say, despite the odds being closer. I don't know. Kelvin Gastelum he's just because of the durability, isn't it? We talk about legendary chins. He's a man with one of them, that is for sure. And Joe Pfeiffer, for all of his faults, and on the mic and in the cage, he is an absolute powerhouse. I think that we can very much agree. He hits like a bloody freight train. So it's unstoppable force meets immovable object. But I take it back. Was it Jack Manson that fraud checked him? I hate to use the term fraud check, but that was the one that was flying around when that fight did take place. with that in mind, I don't know. I like Gastelum there. I do. Maybe it is just me hoping more than anything because I'm not really a particular fan of Joe Pyfer. But I don't know. What are your 2 cents on that one?
It's a difficult one to call just because you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of either fighter. You really don't, right? Because Joe Pyfer's coming off a loss, so you really don't know what adjustments he's made to his game, and you don't really know what strategy is going to come out with. And it is a 3-round fight, which I do think favour Joe Pyfer, but he did just have 5 rounds, right? So he's had a good amount of experience. He's had some good looks against the very best. But then on the flip side, I say you don't know what you're going to get with Kelvin Gastelum, but you kind of do know what you're going to get. And that's maybe more so the problem. You know that he's just going to look to land a 1-2, a 1-1-2, a 2. And that's kind of it, really. That's kind of it. He hasn't really made many adjustments in his career to his game plan and his strategy. He actually has sneaky good kicks. We don't really see his kicks enough. He head kicked Israel. I mean, if you can head kick a 6'4" middleweight, you should be able to head kick anyone in that division, really. So I'd actually like to see him use his high kicks a little bit more, and that will, as well, stop the right-hander Joe Pyfer. You can't punch someone in the face when you're having to defend a head kick, and you have to defend a head kick no matter what the internet says on my breakdown videos. you have to defend a head kick. I know that faction, right? So, yeah, it's an interesting one because Joe Pyfer does crack hard, but he cracks hard against people that are a little bit more... What's the word? Not green. That's the wrong word.
Yeah. No. I get the angle you're going for.
Less skilled?
Yeah.
I think so, right? He just knocks out people. He's knocked out a lot of people. But with that said, again, waking up on Sunday morning and we see a headline which is Joe Pyfer, first man to knock out Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, very true.
Wouldn't be shocked, right? Wouldn't be shocked. Kelvin has been in a lot of wars. He has been up and down weight classes. And my sort of question is, what's he doing? What's his plan? Is his plan to solidify himself at 185 and go, you know what? I've bounced around. I've got to the top. I've suffered some losses. I really want to kick on now in this later part of my career. I really want to go on the Michael Bisping run. And I want to just knock off a few wins and flip him, make my way to gold. Is that what we're going to see from Kelvin? Or are we going to see him just kind of go through the motions, go through a fight camp, turn up, he knows he's durable, he knows he can box and have a scrap? In which case, I think Joe Pyfer might beat him.
Yeah, I think it's the latter, purely on the basis that in historically through his career, I feel like Gastelum probably could have been a champion if the work ethic was better. He's missed weight many times, and that's been a big point of contention for him, purely because of his diet. That's been a big thing for him. He has not made weight because of a lack of discipline, and I think that's representative of his career as a whole. And maybe that will bite him in the arse again come Saturday night.
Has he missed weight? How many times?
Yeah, mate, loads of times. A lot. I think Dana White forced him to move up a weight class. Yeah. Again, and that was a while ago, so he's been able to move back down since, but he's fought at catch weights multiple times. Like, he has a lack of discipline in particular when he was fighting at welterweight. And I think he probably could have been champion there if he actually stuck to a proper plan. But I don't know. That's my point. Is that representative of his career and his work ethic as a whole? Maybe. And that might bite him in the ass against Joe Pyfer. And you can't really afford to make mistakes against a guy who hits that hard, that much. I think we probably agree on. But I think there's one more fight we can quickly jump through. Yeah. Bo Pyfer. He does remind me of Bo Nickel, doesn't he?
He looks so much like him. He does kind of remind
me of Bo Nickel. I know.
Very similar. So much like him.
Yeah. I think, that, as I said, one more fight we can probably run through. And that is because of one half of that fight is a UFC debutant, but a man who has a lot of pedigree in the mixed martial arts world. And you can already see where I'm going with this, because I did mention him just before we punch record. And that is one patchy mix of Bellator fame who is a serious talent. And whether that translates over to the top division, or should I say top promotion, that is the UFC, remains to be seen. But I'm sure that the world wants to see him win purely on the basis that he's fighting Mario Batista, who after that Jose Aldo fight is public enemy number one then and still now. But it's an exciting fight, at least on the patchy mixes side of things. I think it's going to be interesting to see him fight in the UFC. That alone, it makes me want to watch. So
I just think Bautista being so hated is kind of funny because he's just such a...
He really doesn't deserve it. Like, he's so...
No.
There's so much worse people
No.
in the John
And
Jones
also-
exists. I mean, to be fair, he's actually pretty hated right now, but...
And also,
you
it's
know,
kind of
there's a lot
strange as
bad
well.
people.
It's also strange as well because I see so much Jose Aldo hate on the timeline. I just find it kind of bizarre.
Weird.
Really, I think it's just new fans, really. New fans that are trying to say things which are a bit edgy and say, oh, well, if you look at the stats. And I'm like, okay.
Shut up.
Right, all right, yeah. I'm like, move on.
Man was undefeated for 10 years. Just be quiet.
Yeah.
Just
Regardless.
stop it, you know?
And only fought the actual pound-for-pound greatest of all time. And you go back and the Merab fight. Merab is arguably the greatest bantamweight of all time. If you look at his run, I don't think anyone's had a more impressive run of fights than Merab at 135 pounds. I just don't
I agree.
know if that's true. And that's why this is an interesting fight with Patchy Mix, right? Because you've got the bantamweight title at the top of the main card, which is also a training partner of his in Merab. And also a very interesting matchup in someone like Sean O'Malley, because Patchy Mix for a long time has been spoken about being one of the best, if not the best 135 pounder. His front strokes are nasty. His jiu-jitsu is nasty. He genuinely could submit anyone in that division. He really could if he gets his hands on them. I know people that have trained with him and they just said, mate, he just touches you and submits you. It just says it's weird. But I don't know if this is that close, to be honest. But Batista is good everywhere. He doesn't really have many holes. But I just don't see Patchy Mix losing this, to be honest. I think he rises to the occasion. I think he gets the win. And I think he screams out a couple of names on the mic and makes a real big entrance, to be perfect. He needs a finish, though. He needs a big finish, in my opinion. Yes.
Get that momentum, the ball rolling. You need that, especially with the expectations upon you coming from a rival promotion, and especially when you've had so much experience. No, this is almost like, I feel like he's joining at the right time, but people have been waiting for this for a while now, right?
Yeah.
So this is his moment, and it's just a perfect opportunity against a guy who people don't like to get a big finish, perfect opportunity on a pay-per-view. I mean, he's opening up the card, I believe. Let me just double check that. No, sorry.
No,
UK Holland is
Kevin
opening up the card, but still, main card opportunity is still, you know, a big one for him. So, yeah, as you said, a finish, not necessarily paramount, but would do him
it is paramount.
a big favour.
If he gets a big finish, 100%. It is for any debutant, but more so here, because if he gets a big finish with that fight on the card at the top, it's not really that unlikely that he could be looking at somewhat of a title shot next. It's not the craziest thing to assume, because the people that you've got around the... If you think about Petr Yan was first in line, right? Petr Yan's now matched up for Abu Dhabi with Marcus McGee, right? Which I think is a different conversation.
Great fight. Awesome
great fight, right? A fantastic fight. Secondly, there's a good narrative, right? If Merab wins, there's a good narrative between training partners and the style's quite fun and there's not a lot of contenders. And then equally with Sean O'Malley, you've kind of got Corey Sandhagen floating around, and he may not be next.
Oof.
But you know what this game is like? This game isn't actually about who deserves it. This game is about who's the most entertaining and how do the timelines fit. That is what people don't speak about. People never talk about this. And the people in the know of this game, people that know managers, people that closely know fighters and know how the actual, or matchmakers even, it's actually almost, I don't want to say never, because that would be a lie, but it's much less about who deserves what and what makes more sense, rather than where do the timelines fit. Oh, this geezer's having a baby, so he's out for 6 months, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
People never seem to consider these. They just think, right, because in sport, they're never factors that you have to consider. If you're watching Manchester United versus West Ham, you know that it's going to be on December the 16th, right, on a Saturday. You know that's in the diary for however long. Whereas MMA is so different in that regard, that people aren't quite used to it being very dependent on an individual. You have something in the diary. Okay, Roland Garros is this week, so you know that flipping Djokovic is going to be playing here and there, and then 4 months later he's going to be playing here and there. Do you see what I mean? So, a bit of a tangent, but I'm going to go Patchy Mix decision.
Yeah, with you. Decision. I think submission.
Yeah.
I think maybe like I can see like a guillotine or something. Standing
guillotine.
Yeah, against the fence. That's just sticking out to me. I like that. Let's go around 3. Late submission. bit difficult to want to hit, particularly that late when the sweat is everywhere. I know how difficult that is. I had training on Tuesday, and my God, it was difficult to even find any submissions because the other guy was drenched in sweat and you're slipping and sliding everywhere. Not fun in the slightest. But I think that is probably a nice little place to wrap up episode 105 of the MMA Creators Podcast, and we will see you next week. Have a good one.